Tonight, the trial of Erin Patterson wrapped up its third week today as her defence team challenged the prosecution's toxicology evidence. The trial resuming after the dramatic news of the judge dismissing one of the jury. Erin Patterson's trial continued a juror down. Justice Christopher Beale removing them following allegations of conversations outside the jury room.
I hasten to add that I have not made a positive finding that he discussed the case with family and friends, but neither could I dismiss the possibility that he had.
Victoria's chief toxicologist, Dimitri Gerosdimoulos, was back in the stand today under cross-examination. The defence arguing his analysis of leftovers was unreliable after samples taken from two places at Erin Patterson's home were placed in the same bag, then with other rubbish.
The bag that the leftovers were placed in was seeping.
The defence raising the risk of contamination. The tested leftovers first sent to Leongatha Hospital, then the Royal Botanic Gardens on July 31st, before finally arriving at the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine almost a full month later on August 29.
I can't comment on the way they've been handled, only the fact we received them in a large Ziploc bag and we tested the contents.
Gerosdimoulos conceding toxins from death cap mushrooms weren't found in samples from Gail Patterson, Heather Wilkinson or Erin Patterson, but maintaining this itself wasn't conclusive.
It may be that the analysis has not been detected in the sample, or it is at a level which the laboratory cannot detect.
Gerosdimoulos briefly leaving the stand, replaced by Dr. David Lovelock, who testified he detected remnants of death cap mushroom in samples taken from Erin Patterson's dehydrator.
We were able to detect Amanita phalloides in 2 of the 7 test tubes.
Lovelock's brief stint in the stand coming to an end as Gerosdimoulos returned. His evidence rebutting the defence's case Erin Patterson ate the same meal as her guests, despite not suffering any adverse symptoms.
There would likely be some adverse outcomes for the person who survived, the severity of which may vary.
Erin Patterson has pleaded not guilty to all charges. The trial resumes on Monday. Erin Pearson is The Age's crime and justice reporter. She was in the Morwell court today. Erin, what more did we learn from the toxicologist?
We got a lot more detail today, guys, about what the testing was done in the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine weeks after the fatal lunch had occurred. There was a lot of testing that was going on 3 different elements really, largely the beef Wellington that had made its way from Leongatha all the way down to South Bank in Melbourne. And the testing there we saw little samples put into multiple different vials, different pieces of this beef Wellington lunch. But essentially what we heard was toxic death cap mushrooms were found in some of those samples.
Do we know any more about why the toxicologist also left the stand before then again returning?
Yeah, there was a little bit of investigation that had to take place, and there was another witness that we heard from this afternoon before he returned to the stand. Now, that witness, his name was David Lovelock. At the time, back in mid-2023, he was working out of Agricultural Victoria. And some of these samples, as they went to many different specialists, also arrived on his desk. And he was asked to have a look at the beef Wellington samples and also the dehydrator, a black Sunbeam dehydrator that had been seized as part of this investigation. And while he said that his DNA testing was unable to find any traces of death cap mushrooms in the lunch itself, it did return positive samples for that dehydrator. There was a number of samples, 7 taken from that dehydrator, and 2 of those returned a positive result for death cap mushroom toxins.
Questions were also raised about why toxins weren't found in samples from Heather Wilkinson and Gail Patterson. What more can you tell us?
So the jury were told that blood tests were taken from the 4 lunch guests during their time in hospital, and then there was post-mortem samples also taken. In the 2 gentlemen who were at the lunch, we know Don Patterson and Ian Wilkinson, Ian being the surviving lunch guest, urine samples were also taken from them. But the 2 women who were also at the lunch, urine samples weren't taken from them. So once all of these biological results made their way to VIFM, the scientists there were looking at 3 different areas: blood serum, and then also the urine samples. So we heard that in both of the gentlemen's samples, they returned positive results for mushroom toxin, but the women's samples, because the urine wasn't able to be sampled as well, they didn't reach what's called a detectable result. And the jury were told that doesn't mean that it's not there, it just means that the testing systems that they use, the scientists use, have different levels, and the level that they were able to test for wasn't able to be found in the women's samples.
Erin Pearson, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.